those who don't know, my name is Tim
Yeah.
Jans. I'm a leadership development coach and consultant specializing in organizational transformation in higher education and nonprofits primarily. I'm also very happy to be a lead coach at Michiki Morgan.
Yeah. Well, good to have you too. Well, I am Nozomi Morgan, the CEO and founder of Michiki Morgan Worldwide. We are a intercultural leadership development firm. We focus on working with global, multicultural, multinational organizations, including corporate, nonprofits, higher ed, anywhere where there's people and they're gathered. We work with them. And really, our specialty is around that multiculturalness, which looks like it could be country culture, it could be different values, different backgrounds. And we believe that each person has their own culture. So whenever just, the two of us here are already multicultural. So if you can think about it that way, we offer executive coaching. And as Tim said, he's the lead of our executive coaches. We have an amazing team of executive coaches, wide range of experiences. And we do team coaching, group coaching, leadership development programs, trainings, workshops, and consulting, especially around strategic planning work and developing cohesive culture for organizations. So that was my short and long version
I
of who I am and what
I
we.
love your focus on culture in your intro, Nozomi, because of course, we have culture. Like I was born and raised in Germany. You were born and raised in Japan. Obviously, we live in the U.S. We have this kind of bi-coastal upbringing. But there's also, when we look at organizations, they also have their own cultures.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even have subcultures within organizations that are so important and really drive a lot of what is happening and what's not happening and how people are being treated, how they feel empowered and feel included. And I'm just really excited today that we can explore this idea of collective wisdom a little bit more. We talked about it 2 weeks ago, but we ended saying there is so much more to explore. So I'm super excited about that
Yeah.
because the culture very much determines, I think, how much and how easy it is for folks in leaders and organizations to actually activate and draw on that collective wisdom that is contained within the organization.
Agreed. Agreed. I know you want to start with a little game that we play each time. So,
Yeah, let's do it.
okay. So should I ask you the question first?
I'll ask you. I'll ask you.
Okay.
I'll ask you to kind of put you on the spot here.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's such a beautiful spring day here, and so in the past we've always had questions that were somewhat work related. This has nothing to do with work, and I'm wondering, Nozomi, what is the most beautiful place that you have ever been to?
So this is a simple and difficult question. There's so many beautiful places I've been. Um, so I am going to answer this from a place of w- the one. If I were to define beautiful a little bit differently here, I am defining it as what really had a big impact on me. Because beauty comes in different ways. And so I had the opportunity to travel to Egypt in 2019. And I loved, as a child, this is back in the days when we had encyclopedias. I loved looking at pages of Egypt and the pyramids and the Sphinx and the mummies. Mostly mummies was my interest when I was a kid. And I love cats, like the mummified cat and all
Awesome.
that stuff, right?
Great combination.
And I'm not a Egyptian history expert or anything. I just was captivated by the idea. And then finally in 2019, I had the opportunity to visit one of my good friends. She invited me to come with her on a tour, and we were there for roughly 2 weeks. Um, I visited the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx early in the morning before the tourists come. So I think this was around like 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. Dark, and you're in the desert with the big pyramid and the Sphinx. And then I looked up at the sky. It's it's just all, it was like a blanket of the sky full of stars. And we as humans realize how small we are. And not just the stars were beautiful, and the Sphinx, and just being in that picture, that scene where I've seen so many literal pictures, and like I said, as a child too. But that was the first time I really felt the magnitude of how big this world is, or how big this universe is, because you can think beyond just Earth. You can look into um to space, because you can't see the end, right? It's just like the sky continues, the black sky continues, and there's so many stars. So that was actually the first time. I know a lot of times we say how we're connected with each other and how actually
Mhm.
small we are in this big world. And also, people might have heard the word of like, oh, we're one with the universe. That is the first time I actually truly
Mhm.
understood, like, oh, I am like this little piece of dust
Mhm.
in this universe, in this long history, and especially, with Egypt being thousands of millions of years of history there. It's like, oh, I'm like this little itty bitty piece in this long history, in this
Yeah.
big world, this big universe. And that was really profound to me, finally fully embodying understanding that. And also it made me realize, going back to how connected we are, but also realizing that, my little life is not a big deal, in a good way. About not taking things too seriously.
Mhm.
I felt very free, and felt also very connected at the same time. I hope that makes sense.
I honestly, Nozomi, I don't even know how I can possibly follow that up because that was so beautiful and so profound.
Thank
And
you.
there's so much that resonated with me. I mean, because you touch on so many things that are so relevant for our discussion today.
Yeah,
Before I go into that, so I'm a mountain guy, but I'm
I
also
know.
a desert guy. So um, my husband and I, we have the wonderful privilege of going to Palm Springs, California, every year. In fact, we're actually going to be there next week. I'm
Yeah,
not saying that Palm Springs, California, is naturally the most beautiful place I've ever been to, even though it is really cool with architecture and so forth. But I also had the chance to live in the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming, actually, back in the '90s. And it's not like one particular place. There are several locations around Laramie, Wyoming, whether it's more in the Front Range, where it's more a little north of there, and up I-80 and so forth. But what you're describing, Nozomi, is very much the same reason why I love these places so much, because they're humbling in a good way, aren't they?
yeah,
Right? They make us you feel so connected to nature, to the environment, to what's out there. And in this area, of course, you talked about Egypt and the ancient knowledge, the ancient culture. When you're in the West, there's of course all the Native American or indigenous knowledge and culture out there. And I had a chance to um, visit and explore and experience that a little bit too. And I think that is so powerful when you when you discover that there is this knowledge, you're just this tiny thing, but yet you are part of it,
yeah,
right? You're not outside of it. And to do this the segue here, I think the same is true for organizations. I mean, maybe they're not the universe. They don't make us, feel that we are, part of a great celestial truth, but still we ought to be part of something greater than us, something that is more than the parts of the individuals that are there. And I think that really leads us beautifully, I think, into this idea of collective wisdom. And what is wisdom? Who's the collective? And these are some questions we left open a couple of weeks ago.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Tim, thank you for sharing your story. I love the way what you said, and you used the word exactly I was looking for. I couldn't find, was humbling. It is humbling, and I think that's really the key, also with collective wisdom. So I know you
Mhm.
asked a different question, but I just wanted to make sure I shared this, because I think it's relevant to what we're talking about today. So in the foundation of collective wisdom, there's something that each of us, I would say, needs to have. And if you have that, then collective wisdom comes naturally. It will follow naturally, I should say. So it doesn't come from a place of like, oh, I want to be able to tap into collective wisdom. Let's go. It doesn't go that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like you hit a switch.
But people are going to look at you funny. It's like, what? What
Yeah, yeah,
does that
yeah.
even mean? Yeah.
Where where the fundamental um what do you call it? Way of thinking, philosophy, principle, there's different ways I think you can call this, is really around humility,
Hmm.
knowing that at the same time. So it's both ways, knowing that I am enough, that I have the gift, I have strengths, I'm unique in my own way. Unique in my own is redundant, right? I'm unique. I have things that special to me. By knowing that, if and that's the key, like if that is true, which is true, all of us, everyone who's listening to this, watching this, you might not yet know, but you are special in your own way. And if special sounds a little like ooh, that doesn't feel comfortable, you can say you have your own strengths. There's a reason why you're here. There's a reason why companies or your employer, if you're employed by someone, employers hired you. There's a reason. They didn't just hire you because of your name, right? It's because of who you are, what you have done, or what you bring to the table, the potential, a lot of things that you bring. So if that is true, again, which is true, if you can believe in that, which means that everyone else, it's true to everyone else too, right? And not just you, but other people too. So that's where the humility comes in, knowing that, okay, knowing that I can't do everything. I'm not superhuman. I am amazingly just human, which means then there's a place for everyone too. So if you can believe that for yourself, then it should be true to others. Then it makes collective wisdom is easy to understand, because then you can't do everything just by myself. Then I need other people. I need other people's strength and expertise. So that's where the humility comes from. And one of the principles that's really important to us in our leadership framework is leading with humility, knowing that you might be in a so-called leadership role, but you're guiding these amazing people, and knowing that I don't know everything. That's where the team comes in. That's where the organization comes in. That's where stakeholders, I know we wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. The stakeholders come in. So really that word that you said, humbling, by knowing that changes everything. And if I could just step in a little bit more, I see a lot of the leaders and managers that we've worked with that get stuck at a certain level or
Hmm.
burn out is typically when they don't know how to kind of flip that story and realizing that, oh, I don't need to do everything just by myself. I don't need to know the answers. I don't need the one to have the answers or go find the answers all the time. That's the differentiation from people that rise up and get into higher level positions or able to manage bigger teams, lead bigger teams, or lead or projects, and the ones who get stuck and burn out working so hard, and they have so much potential and so much ability, are
Hmm.
not able to really showcase that in a way or make an impact that they want.
Which is actually brings us kind of back to the culture, the corporate culture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because humility is something that you can or you may have, but if your organization and the culture of it doesn't appreciate it, doesn't allow you to be humble, when it's all about being braggadocious and all about producing yourself in this strong outward I know everything image, if that is what the organization really wants, there's no place for humility, right? But as a result of that, there's also little place for collective wisdom, because there's this underlying assumption within this organization that the leader knows it all. And I think
Yeah.
that is something really, really important to also acknowledge, that what we're discussing here may not necessarily be possible. It's an optimal solution, but may not always be possible in all organizational contexts. It's an aspirational thing, right? And with my career in higher education is a strange beast. It is so segmented, so siloed. There's silos within silos. There are faculty versus staff versus the administrators. Nobody talks each other's language or speaks each other's language, doesn't really talk to each other. They don't think very highly of each other. And there's a lot of posturing involved in the organizations that I've been in, the institutions I've been with. So again, when you come in as a leader with more of from a perspective of humility, it doesn't work. And what's happened in my case, I flipped almost to the polar opposite. And I kind of became what I thought the organization was expecting of me, which really, did a lot of harm. So that's, my personal story here. But I wanted to mention one more thing, because I thought about this idea of wisdom, and I think humility is a fundamental element of wisdom for the exact reasons that you explain, you described those. I mean, because we don't have all the answers. We have knowledge. We are worthy. We're enough, but we also don't have everything, right? So we need others. So when I think about wisdom, I thought, wisdom is, and this may sound a little academic here, kind of an emergent property. And what I mean by that is that it requires a certain threshold level of complexity. And what I mean by that, it requires that we bring together different kinds of knowledge and experiences. Because we, as one human being, we cannot possibly create or bring with us, or in very rare cases, can we, the width and breadth of experiences and knowledge that is required to really develop wisdom, especially in an organizational sense, right? So we need others to contribute to that. And once you hit the certain threshold of that, I think wisdom is something that emerges. And I don't know, Nozomi, that's, we never talked about it this way, and I just came up with that. But what goes through your mind when I say that? You're just like, you're just too academic, or what are you thinking?
Yes, no, yes and no. So yes, I love how your academic culture comes through when we talk about like definitions, and I love that it's really important to you to make that very clear. So I'm enjoying this so much. So I agree with you
She
that
does the fingers. I love it.
yeah, I was like, I love this so much. I agree with you. So wisdom is everything that you said, and also it emerges. It's not set in stone. It doesn't just get well, because every second as humans we live, there's new wisdom that we keep on collecting,
Mhm.
right? So it has to emerge. So, and we also have to acknowledge what we knew, just to make it extreme, but 1,000 years ago and today is different, because 1,000 years ago, the whole world has only lived up to that timeline. So that's, and if we get a little closer, 100 years ago, 10 years ago, a year ago, right? Or now we call what before COVID, after COVID,
Oh yeah.
BCAC is different, right? So people, or even before social media and
Yeah.
after social media.
Mhm.
So when we say wisdom, at any given point, it continues to evolve. That's so when people say, I hope we go back to the good old times. Our good old times and someone else's good old times is different times, right? Like we have different levels of good
Absolutely.
old times. But the truth is, that's one of a red flag for me when I hear companies or leaders say, "Oh, I wish we could go back to the good old times." It's like, because the truth is, we never will. And if that's how you think, it just kind of a red flag for me is like, okay, there's some mindset stuff we need to work on here, because if the leader wants to go backwards, what does that tell their team or the people, around that person? Um, so anyhow, that's another story, another thing we
Mm.
can talk about for sure. Um, But going back to the definition of wisdom, I really kind of come back is I really like it to be super clear that it's a living being, like you said, it evolves. Um, and I do think there's different cultural wisdoms or
Hmm. Hmm.
different perspectives on wisdoms. Um, some like coming from Japan, when I hear the word wisdom, it feels more of a inner state, like a inner wisdom that is not just book wisdom, but more of that person's like deep understanding of humanity and the nature and the universe, and that kind of is more of what comes to me when I hear that word.
Egypt and the Sphinx.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And I think more of the Western, and just making a very
Yeah.
big assumption here. I think from a Western context, a lot of the wisdom is intellectual wisdom. Um, again, and then um, and I hate to loop this into just indigenous because again, that's a huge grouping, and it's not fair. Um, but I think also there's a lot of wisdom that comes from through the people, right? Through the history. Um, so I think even within different cultures, or even if it's the same word of wisdom, there's different ways we how we experience it, or how we define it.
Yeah.
So in our context, that's the whole point, and that's why I call it collective wisdom,
Hmm.
because each of us has different whatever we bring in. And you said this at the very beginning of our conversation. What's great about the two of us, just the two of us, we bring so much wisdom or experience and a lot of things because we're very different. You're, German by birth, and I'm Japanese by birth. But if you pick another German person out of Germany or Japanese out of Japan, very different, right?
Yes.
So we really look at um, culture as people culture,
Hmm.
and not, and that goes back to each person has their own culture, and that's therefore collective wisdom. When we say collective wisdom, we truly mean there's a lot of different sizes of collectiveness. It could be here, this is a collective wisdom already, and there's a third person, meaning you, the watchers, the viewers. You're part of this collective wisdom. It's part of the conversation. Collective wisdom as a team, it could be the team members. It could go even, we work when we do with teams or companies, it goes even beyond that. At times it means people that they interact with within the organization
Hmm.
or outside of the organization. We've done work where we actually interviewed their customers, for example. So that's external. It could be I was in a project that they even included people from the association that company belonged to, as an example, because they were leaders in that industry. So they brought industry associations because they were shaping the future of the industry. That's their mindset as a company.
Hmm.
So when you say collective, it depends on the context and what
Yep.
we're doing.
Absolutely.
But it can go as that wide, or it can be a little bit narrower, like the two of us or the three of us. I said the third person, the third person too. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Oh no, you're. I think you're absolutely right, and you actually hit on something that I wrote. I always have to take notes, because there's so much
Yeah,
that is being said that is just. I want to make sure I remember. So the question, like, who is the collective, right? And you said it right. It depends on the context. It depends on, and I think this is where the leader comes in. You need to be able to identify what is the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. What is the greater good? Which direction do we want to go? What's the vision? What's the mission? To kind of keep that as the North Star, and then you have to collect the right people around it, which then brings us to the question of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? And which, of course, it's very difficult. It's not an easy question to answer, but I wanted to bring one thing in, and Nozomi, thank you for giving me space to do that. I, having been one myself, my heart beats very fondly for the black sheep and for the squeaky wheels. And what I mean by that, by the way, I wrote a little article about this. I am going to put it in the comments or in the notes when we post this video, just so everybody can read it. But I call this of black sheep and other important people. And what I meant by that is, as a leader, it's easy to dismiss those folks who are troublemakers because, like, they're too much trouble. I don't want to deal with them. But here's the thing: if somebody is passionate enough to speak up with competence, knowing what really ails the organization, where there's room for improvement, and they're passionate enough about it to speak up because they want to improve things for everybody. Those are the people you actually want to listen to. Now, there's a caveat. We all have folks in our teams who are the big naysayers. And the reason why they always want to be in opposition, because at the end, if something goes wrong, they want to be able to tell you, well, I told you this wasn't going to work. Those are the people you do not want to listen to because it's ultimately about them. But the people
Well,
for whom, huh?
yeah. No, there's something I would love to add to that. So keep
No,
on going.
please do, please
You know,
do. Yeah.
so I would just say I agree with you, and I love so Tim, you wrote an amazing article on this. So yeah, please everyone, make sure you read the article. And I love how it's so good to have that visual image of a black sheep because we always have one of those in our life. And like you said, probably a lot of you who are listening to this, watching this are one of those because I
I
just have a
hope they
feeling.
are.
I know, right? Because we care about you because we understand you because you care, right? Because you're passionate about this, because you have ideas and opinions, because you want to make it better. So I think that goes back to the humility piece that's really
Mhm.
important as leaders, understanding if they have a voice, each of us have a voice, and it's as a leader, it's your responsibility to be able to create a space for them to be equally heard. So that's number one. And I have just a little bit of a different take. I said different, but just a slight, like, different angle, Tim. What I want to bring in is it's not so much, I think, that you don't want to bring in naysayers. I think what I see, and I know academic is very complex, so I'm saying this more from a corporate side of
Mm.
it, is that what I find is that naysayers, again, also want their voice to be heard. And what I find is that they just don't know how to channel that in a productive
Yeah,
way.
that's a good
And
point.
that's where leaders, and a lot of leaders don't know how to guide them to that place. So that's where just a little different take. It's not that you
Mhm.
don't want them to be there. You want them to be able to contribute in a productive way, positive way. When I say positive, I mean not like cheerleader positive, but a positive way, but life-giving, adding
Mhm.
value way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what we actually often why we get hired to do the work that we do. So we do, like I was sharing earlier, we do strategic planning work or leadership, team building or team alignment work. And the craziest thing is, and we just did one last week with a leadership team for our organization that needs to have, like, serious change. They need to move forward. Like, the industry is moving forward. Their customers are moving in, forward, and they're still kind of behind. They're doing the old way. And the president came to us saying, I've told them they need to do new things and, find innovative ways, go find new customers, but it just doesn't get to them. I don't know what to do. I don't know if they really understand how critical and crucial this is. And after 6 hours with us, they all realized, like, oh, we're actually all on the same page.
Yep.
So it wasn't that they didn't understand. It was just that the leader didn't know how to get them
Mm.
together and move them forward
Yep.
and how to activate that collective wisdom. And that's why we do the work that we do. That's
Mhm.
why we're here. And that's what we also teach, right? That's where
Yeah.
the 3C framework that, truly obviously biased, but was super, passionate about this because we know if each voice matters, even the
Yeah.
naysayers, black sheeps, everyone,
Yeah.
they want to be heard. But a lot of times the leader doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And we have a framework that really beautifully works, powerfully works. And we also are able to develop leaders who can do that.
Yeah.
So that was my soapbox moment of
Your
just
spiel. No, no, I'm glad
I
you brought this
agree
up.
with you, Tim, and it's
Yeah.
a and that's where we see a lot of leaders need help, and teams and
Yeah.
organizations need help.
And one thing that I thought it'd be a good place maybe to
Yeah,
close with is
yeah,
just a couple of questions maybe leaders can ask themselves. So I wrote down a couple, and maybe Nozomi, you can come up with a couple as well.
yeah,
But I thought, so if you really want to activate collective wisdom, you know, I think leaders ought to ask themselves, formal leaders I'm talking about here, right? So who is actually directly affected by what is being decided, but who is absent from this decision? Who needs to be at least heard? And that I think includes some of the naysayers, right? You at least want to hear them. And here's a question that might be a little bit blunt and a little bit rough, but I think it's an important one because it intersects with culture. Who is and who isn't entitled to an opinion in your organization? And that is a tough question to ask yourself because it may dig up a couple of unpleasant realities, I think, but I think it's super important. And then, of course, how can we create sufficient complexity at the table of opinions, of experiences, of voices that we can actually activate this? So, those questions, I think, are very, very important for leaders to ask. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to be included in everything because ultimately, that would just make it impossible to make a decision. But we want to create, I think, this sweet spot
yeah.
of complexity. Is there something that comes to mind? Is there something I've forgotten?
No, no. I mean, there's a lot of questions to ponder. But I think those are very important questions and powerful questions. And even just by thinking through that, I think there's a lot of ahas or
Mhm,
different
mhm.
sides that leaders can think about. So I love that. Yeah, thank you, Tim, for bringing those questions
And
forward.
of course, if any of our listeners are interested in exploring these matters more deeply, please reach out to us. That's
Yeah,
what we do as coaches. That's what we live and we breathe and we're passionate about is leading people, being people's sounding board, thinking partner to explore those questions. So they may be hard, but the insights you can gain from really digging deep are extremely powerful. And we're here for you. So
yeah,
reach out.
yeah. Thank you, Tim. Yes, absolutely. We're here for you. And if just to add to that, if any of the leaders here listening are curious how we, guide these the stakeholders, I think because that's another, I feel like a fear that I find when we talk to leaders, the reason why they don't do certain things is because there's a fear of like, oh, they'll get out of control if I have too many people in the room. We hear you. We're here for you. Again, that's the work that we do. That's why clients come to us to help them with that. And if you want to explore that and want to know more how, just let us know. So,
Perfect.
yeah,
Great final words. So I guess this is it for today. We're going to put a little bit of a capstone, I guess, on the three C's. And so we look forward to exploring that a little bit more. And
yes.
Nozomi, I'll leave it to you to close today's session.
Okay. Well, yes. If you have any topics or anything more specifically that you want us to explore, feel free to message us through LinkedIn or in comments. We always make sure we monitor them, and we really want to hear from you. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you,
Bye,
Tim.
everybody. Bye
Bye.
bye. Thanks, Nozomi.
Thank you. Bye bye.